Welcome to Life L'Chaim. On today's show, host Lee Lazerson talks with Dr. Nathan Katz, distinguished professor at Florida International University, about the new Pew Report, which gives findings on the state of Judaism today. We'll be right back after these messages.
In October 2013, the Pew Research Center completed a study that surveyed 3,500 Jews in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. This study paints a bleak picture for Judaism in America and an even bleaker picture for the support that Israel will receive from those Jews currently in their youth, teens, and early 20s. It is not without criticism, however. With us to discuss the Pew Research study is Professor Nathan Katz. Dr. Katz is a distinguished professor at Florida International University in Miami and an academic director of the Jewish Museum of Florida at FIU. You've been a fellow at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, and you're an author of 15 books, hundreds of articles, and arguably the world's foremost authority on Indian Jewish communities. Professor Katz, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Lee.
So the study was extremely comprehensive, and what are your thoughts as we reviewed the study and all its findings?
I think it's been interpreted as a much more negative portrait than it really in fact is. I see sparks of light in the midst of all the digging that the study did.
They talk about, I know they started the study and the review of it with some very positive insights with respect to how proud Jews feel. Upwards of 70–80% of Jews, I think it was 84 actually, that talk about how proud they are to be Jews. But then there's many aspects which talks about the decline of religiosity, and that there's a very low percentage of Jews who consider, or a very high percentage of Jews who consider themselves non-religious.
Right.
What has happened over time to Judaism? Well,
it is true today, and has really always been true, that Judaism is an extraordinarily complicated religion. It is not easy to participate in the good stuff of Jewish life. Of course, it involves knowing at least one other language that we don't speak regularly. But the knowledge base is intimidating for many people. So it goes back to education, as most things do. In order to be able to participate in Jewish life in a meaningful way requires a lot of education on Jewish history, Jewish languages, Jewish literature, Jewish culture, and so on and so on. There's two problems with that. One is that education is very expensive. Most day schools are in the neighborhood of $20,000. That's after tax dollars, and if there are 3 or 4 children, sending your kids to a Jewish day school is genuinely impossible for the vast majority of Jews. So that's a problem. But there are solutions, there are ways to deal with that.
Even if you don't send your child to a Jewish day school, sending them to Hebrew school, after school Hebrew school,
absolutely
is not cheap.
But that's one of the alternatives, is supplementary Jewish education. Another that is just in our neighborhood, in our area, is taking off is charter schools, which I see as tremendous potential for our community in particular, and for any community that's concerned with its own identity and survival, as we are. So number one, it's difficult to learn all of that stuff. It takes educational resources. Resources, by the way, shouldn't be just left to the individual family. In some communities, the Jewish associations, federations, etc., have assumed a large part of that responsibility. And I think it's in Seattle. They see that no Jewish day school is above $3,000 a year in tuition. And most anyone could swing that kind of number. So Jewish education it's not easy. It's expensive, and it's also got a lot of competition. One reason Jews may be falling away from the religious life is simply because they can in this culture. There's a very beautiful American society here with great rewards and benefits, but if you want to really succeed in America, you've got to do very well. You need the good degrees and advanced degrees, and you have to take all these tests. And so the secular education required for success in this culture is also high.
Right.
So given that choice between religious and secular education, a choice that hardly any Jews in the world have ever had before now, we can understand a little bit why the benefits, the payoff for secular education are more immediate, and the benefits for Judaic education may be more long-term. So we can understand.
There's a great component to Judaism that is extremely secular, in terms of a large percentage who consider themselves secular, non-religious Jews, as this survey indicated. How have we become so secular in terms of outside of the aspects of education?
Well, because we can. Because this society welcomes us. Because Gentile mothers want their daughters to marry Jewish men very frequently. It's not that they don't like us and don't want us to join them. That would preserve our community. But they love us. And we're not used to that. And we have to learn to cope with that. And I know of one example in all of history that parallels what's going on in America. And of all places, that's in China. There's a Jewish community there for about 1,000 years. And the Chinese, they liked their Jewish neighbors. They didn't understand much what their religion was, but it was a sort of a secular viewpoint. If you want to be Jewish, you want to be Muslim, you want to be Confucian, that's fine. But success in traditional China depended inordinately on the civil service examinations. That is, if you got to be a Mandarin, an official of the Chinese government, not only was your career assured, but your whole family's welfare for generations. So the goal was to pass the Mandarin examinations, and Jews did in unbelievable numbers regarding this tiny percentage of the population they were.
Right. What is the background of those Jews? They come from Eastern Europe?
No. They probably came from Central Asia and from India via sea route in one hand and the Silk Route in the other hand. So the Jews who succeeded, the best and the brightest, in order to train for those exams, neglected Jewish education. So the cost for secular success in America, in China, other places maybe too, is to some extent a neglect of Jewish education. And the pity is, one just cannot fully partake of the spiritual richness and beauty of Judaism without that training and background.
Okay, well, we're going to break right here. And when we come back, we're going to dive into this with a little bit more detail and get your viewpoint on that.
Good.
We'll be right back. We're back with Dr. Nathan Katz, Distinguished Professor at FIU. Dr. Katz, we're discussing the Pew Study. And I know one of the questions that you and I have talked about on the phone and exchanged emails about was, can you be a Jew and still believe in Jesus as the Messiah, or just believe in Jesus? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure you can. Also one of the questions...
You can't, right? You can't.
No, you can. You can, but I'll tell you why you can and how you can. And also the question was, can you be an atheist and be Jewish?
Can you be an atheist?
Let me talk about that a tiny bit first.
Okay.
That's very easy. Of course you can, because there always have been. Faith and doubt are not opposites. They are part of the same process. So to doubt the truths of the religion, to doubt about God, to doubt about revelation is part of Judaic tradition. Right. So we've had Jewish atheists.
We can go into a whole separate discussion on that, because this is, I see... many people view atheists very negatively, unless you've gotten to know, some. But they view atheism very negatively, and I see the names of some leaders of some very prominent organizations, atheist organizations, who all have Jewish last names, and it's like this thing that sticks in your craw.
It does. It does me too. It does me too, because they're missing out on so much. But as a social policy, that's their choice. You can be a Jew and be for Jesus. Now, why?
Why?
Thank you.
Because the survey says that that upwards of 66% of Jews believe that you can't believe Jesus is a Messiah and still claim.
So let me straighten it out. This is really extremely simple. If by Jewish you mean a member of an ethnic group, then you can be a Jewish Christian, a Jubu, a Hindu, a Jewish atheist, anything you want, just like you can be an Irish Jew or an Irish Catholic or an Irish Buddhist. As an ethnic group, which is part of, that's one sense of what we are, believe whatever you like. But if you mean Judaic, if you mean the religion of Judaism, then emphatically not. And the belief in a fulfilled Messiah and everything we know in our religious tradition are simply antithetical. And it's disturbing that more than a very few Jews, at least to me it's disturbing, would say that it is possible. Because religiously it's impossible, culturally, ethnically, of course it is.
Right. Well, there's a great percentage of Messianic Jews who believe very much so that you can be Jewish by faith and religion and still believe Jewish is the Messiah.
I know there are. I sat down and spoke with many, and big surprise we don't convince one another. But I'm also interesting. I'm in contact with some friends in South India who are Christian, who have been in India for thousands of years, and who claim that they originally came from Israel and settled in South India, and we know Jews did at that time, around the 1st century, and that St. Thomas came to them and converted them, and they always continued their Jewish practices, Passovers, Seders, and this and that, for thousands of years while worshiping in their churches. And they insist they are Jewish Christians. They're Jewish both in their acceptance of the laws of Torah and in their in the assertion of their ethnic identity in India. So that group I might want to bracket out because that's a very interesting. They're the original ones. But since then, through what's happened in history in our half of the world,
well, let's
can't
talk
be done.
Let's talk about that a little bit about that path to secularism. That you know, what happens in a Jewish family that moves them from religious roots that somewhere along the line all our families held, and then moves away by whatever means, intermarriage or whatever the case is, to becoming agnostic and or just completely apathetic to potentially atheism. And so what's transpired over time in our families that has moved families away from intramarriage?
Yeah. So that's an enormous problem. That I don't see any simple solutions for. But the problem is made more difficult for us in that, as I said before, participating in the religion requires a lot of knowledge, and without that knowledge, it's a barrier. I mean, you see, there's so many people, we call them balei teshuvas, Jews who want to return to more strict Jewish observance, to see 40-year-old men and women cracking their heads over Aleph Bet, the Jewish alphabet, to get to anywhere where they can really read the text and pray in the language and so forth. It's a next to impossible task. So, so once the education falls off, then there's nothing left to hold them together. The core of the tradition is so beautiful and meaningful that without being able to participate in that core, what's going to hold people there?
Is it, you know, in addition to that, is there issues that we face in being in a Christian America that that contribute to that, you know, in terms of the celebration of holidays, that, you know, of a Christmas holiday that, you know, overwhelms any celebration that could occur from Hanukkah? Well,
I'm sorry.
Because as a youth, you know, as we all experience that as a youth, and there are many people, and again, this goes to some people who are Jews who fight the fact of putting a manger in a city square, who fight all those kind of policies.
And they fight just as much putting a Chanukiah, a menorah, in a city square. I call them the secularist jihadis. They're a tough group. But all I can say is, if you celebrate the Jewish festivals, you're not going to be jealous of other festivals. Jews have done that in Christian societies, Muslim societies, Hindu, Confucian, Buddhist societies for 2,000 years. and it has not eroded their faith. We are very good at living as a minority. We have always known how to contribute to that majority culture in very meaningful ways while retaining our identity and our own ways of life. It's only now, with the advent of secularism and the fact that there are no barriers to our entry into the larger society, that cause us what is a problem, but it's a very good problem to have.
Okay. We're going to come back and finish up with our last segment. We'll be back right after these messages.
Okay.
We're back with Dr. Nathan Katz. Doctor, there were some disconcerting issues with respect to the attachment to Israel in this survey, in which 69% of all American Jews are very or somewhat attached to Israel, but only 45% of those with no religion feel as strongly about Israel. And it's even younger among the millennial generation, those born 1980, after 1980. Theirs is in the 20s. How do you think that affects policy towards Israel, Israel policy towards
I should
the
think
US?
Jews who are very attached to Israel either have the Holocaust as an important reference point in their own lives, whether from their family or from reading or wherever, or are religious. Either of those, I think, naturally makes for a strong attachment with Israel. Now,
we spoke to Professor Alan Dershowitz about a year ago now, and one of the things that he talked about was this issue, obviously long before the study, but this issue with our youth that they didn't get to see the 67-day war,
right,
and feel that pride. They didn't get to see the 73 war and feel that sense of pride, so that they're not as prideful towards Israel.
I can imagine that's true, but that's not been my experience. I'm a university teacher, and I am an advisor to student groups, Jewish and others. I'm engaged with students. And I see a real resurgence of Israel activism on my campus at FIU, and that's echoed around the United States. That Israel, to put it bluntly, has been getting dumped on for so long by the media and by their professors that the students themselves initiate a response. And if you know the issues, if you know the history, Israel's case is very easy to make. But if you don't, again, education, if you don't know the case for Israel, you're overwhelmed by the Palestinian students and their supporters. So the community has met the students' demands with Birthright, with all the Israel programs, with the Israel advocacy programs. And on my campus anyway, you see much more pro-Israel activism than pro-Palestinian activism. My university may be unique.
Right.
I even read the other day that University of California at Berkeley, in the People's Republic of California, the Jewish Student Union there denied the J Street group access to their umbrella organization because they felt that J Street supported the bondage, divest, and sanction movement, the BDS movement, and they just ruled that out of the Jewish mainstream.
Right.
Good for the students at Berkeley.
Right.
So I see a lot more response, intelligent response, coordinated response on our campuses. That trend is in the process of reversing, I'm confident.
Yeah, because one of your sister state universities, actually just down the road from where we are today.
They've had some problems.
They've had some major issues with pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel.
Yeah, and one thing you can't do is try to silence anybody. This is university and free speech. What you have to do is give more intelligent speech. And give FIU time. They'll catch up. I mean, this is I know of statewide efforts in Florida, and I know of national-wide. Get them to Israel. Get them to meet the right kind of people in Israel. It'll turn. It'll turn, and it is turning.
Very good. Well, let's talk about the future.
I'd like to talk about the future.
What are some trends that you see?
Yeah, based on this survey, a couple of things seem very obvious to me. One, in the future, whenever that is going to be, there will be fewer Jews in the United States than there are today. Okay. But those Jews will be much more knowledgeable about Judaism and much more engaged with the religious life of the Jewish community, including in Israel. So we're going to be smaller, but it's the world of downsizing will be leaner and meaner. We will have more committed Jews, a more committed core, and I think that's what we mean. That's one thing. Another thing, this is totally outside the scope of the survey, Jews are going to be a much more pluralistic and diverse group ethnically, racially, and culturally. This is the story that nobody knows, and this is what we're doing a lot of research on at FIU. Just the other day, the president of Nigeria visited Israel. This was a celebration in both countries because many Nigerians believe they are in the seat of Israel. And to see their president go to Israel and be embraced in Israel is a tremendous affirmation of their identity. There may be as many as 10 million people in Nigeria alone who claim Jewish identity, which is not to count even the Jews in Uganda, in Zimbabwe, in Congo, and in other places, and that's only Africa, not to mention the B'nai Menashe group from northeastern India who are being brought to India, and I haven't mentioned the Ethiopians because they're already in Israel, not to mention groups in South America, former Marranos or Anusim, who are reclaiming their Jewish identity. This is a very mysterious, very global phenomenon. And in the foreseeable future, the world Jewish community is going to be enhanced in numbers by these groups as they mainstream into Judaism. And we're going to look like an entirely different people than we do today. The cultural, ethnic, and so forth complexion and dimensions of our community are to be greatly expanded. And I think we will be a much stronger, more robust group of people, a nation, than we've ever been before.
At the ground level,
Yeah.
in terms of what takes place in our synagogues, is there anything that can be done from your perspective to increase membership, increase involvement?
Well, everybody says the right word, but I don't think many people know what it means, and that word spirituality. I'm talking about this beautiful, meaningful core of Judaism. And we find that a decade or two ago, many Jews got so involved with Hinduism and Buddhism, the Jubus, the Hindus. But what happened with those people, who many remained where they are, fine, but many came back into the religion, both into the left and the right wings of the religion, both through the Orthodox movement, the Baalei Teshuva, so that meditation is taught in some of the really Haredi seminaries that never was before because of the demand for it, and it's infiltrating Orthodoxy. On the other end, we have the Jewish Renewal Movement and the great work of Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi and others, and that group has grown and is taking on its own life, and it is infiltrating the Reform and Conservative movements.
Right. Would you include Kabbalah in that?
Kabbalah Center? I probably would.
Okay.
Yes, I probably would. I have my disagreements, but I have my disagreements with every Jewish group. But they're trying to find a way to give meaning in Jewish terms to people's lives, and that's what we need to do.
Right. So you feel, at its core, and we got about 30 seconds left, that we went away from the spiritual aspect of the religion.
Oh, yes.
At the three major...
The over-rationalized form of religion, absolutely so. And that's a turnoff,
Right.
put it simply, to the millennials. But some went, came back, and brought back with them very, very, very precious understandings that they apply to Jewishness now.
Very good. Dr. Katz, it was a very fast show.
It
We
went like
appreciate your
lightning.
time with us.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you very much. That's it for this edition. For more information on our show, please visit us on the web at tolifelchaim.com. I'm Lee Lazerson. Thank you very much for joining us. And to life, l'chaim.